Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Enlightened Masculinity. We're talking about escaping the labyrinth of communication today. Two specific topics embedded in that: social violations, how to overcome them, how to understand what they are and use them to your advantage, and frames, control. We'll get into what these are, maybe what they are. We'll give a little bit of background, and then we're going to go into actual techniques, mindsets, and some of our experience on the matter. There are two co-hosts here. We're talking about enlightened masculinity. I'm one of your co-hosts. I am Yogi Chris, PhD, founder of Ninth Limb Yoga, and I travel the world teaching yoga. It's a new path to the same old mountaintop. Ninth Limb is communication, so it's fitting that we're talking about communication today. I also have many books and podcasts. You can find me all over the web. 1,000 videos online, and I also have a PhD in the human universities. So there it is. And so we'll be expressing opinions today. Find them, process them as an adult, please. Be an adult. If you're not an adult, don't tell us you're watching this show, and just process them, pretend like you were an adult. We're also here as entertainers. So this is entertainment. Don't take the shit we say seriously. But if it works for you, fits for your life, then by all means, add it. And so, like I said, this show has a co-host. He is a biotech research analyst for the biggest drug dealers in the world, a.k.a. the drug companies near the Northeast. And he could tell you a lot more about that, but I know that they got multi-billion-dollar budgets, and he's the guy that's telling them where to put their money. So that's pretty impressive. He's also a registered yoga teacher and starting a yoga following there in Montclair, New Jersey, the Rising Suns. Welcome to the show, my brother Akash Inti Katakam.
Thank you, brother. Illustrious introduction as always, and really, really appreciate it. Couple quick things before we start the show. If you like our content, subscribe, and share this to others. We would love to continue to get this content out to others and share it, because these are the things that we've been studying and live and really enjoy. So with that, I also want to mention that we have an event coming up on April 6th. So this would be this coming Saturday. If you're interested, reach out to Yogi, Chris, and I. We're getting some ideas together in terms of a topic. But super, super excited about bringing to you guys some content that we think would be a bit more specialized and tailored. Aside from that, we really want to get to know you guys a bit better, really see why is it that you're listening to two yogis talk about conversation and communication. With that, brother, I think we jump into the topic. So as I noted to you, right now I'm not at home, as you can tell. I'm in the closet. And it's a really interesting place to be, in the closet, because you can see so many things. But I've been experimenting with communication in general, and last night I was in the fields. When we say in the fields, we're referring to in pickup artist or seduction artist. Communication, this means that you are in an environment where your intention is to communicate. So it could be at the bar, it could be outside, it could be in your house. It's really just any venue that you're going to where you're communicating with others. I'm currently in the field, as I'm not at my house, and yesterday I was noticing social violations and frames, controlling frames. So these are the topics that I wanted to discuss with you today. Maybe we briefly, I guess, reiterate definitions around them before we jump into the meat of the issue.
Yeah, just my take on it. The social violation, social violation is very contextual, because what could be a violation in one culture is not in another. So it's cultural, you could say. It's geographical, it's according to the times. It's not just etiquette, it's not politeness, because there are many things. The etiquette is like formal behavior versus proper behavior is really whatever works, and what is also taking into consideration the genetic code, meaning there are some behaviors which, while they might be maybe proper, may be subcommunicating low value to the genes, to the genetics. And it's, so there's a deep, and it's very layered. But a violation, I see a violation as being something that, I liked how you said it, it's something that makes somebody feel bad, but unintentionally. You didn't intend for them to feel bad. And so you violated them. And a lot of times the violation comes in a group setting or to a venue. So it's happening to somebody you're not even directly interacting with. You're violating the venue, you're violating the bartender, you're violating the bouncer, you're violating someone else that is you're not in direct communication with, but your behavior is a violation of that. Like a easy one would be like you go to a library and you talk too loud. you're violating everybody. That would be a social violation. It also wouldn't be polite. Another violation, let's say a violation if it was, so this would be over politeness, and a violation may separate, may not be the same thing, is let's say I'm interacting with Akash, and Akash has his girlfriend there, and I introduce myself to his girlfriend first. Like, let's say I initiate with the girlfriend. That would be a violation to Akash. Akash, if he wants me to talk with his girlfriend, will introduce me to his girlfriend. I don't need to introduce myself to his girlfriend. Another violation would be if I was hanging out with my girlfriend and Akash, and my girlfriend initiated conversation with Akash. Initiating that conversation with Akash is in the way that I have established the relationship with my girlfriend. It wouldn't be the same thing if it was just some other girl. I was with another girl like that. We don't have that established relationship. But if my girlfriend initiates a conversation with another guy, she just violated me and our relationship. It was a violation, just like you get a traffic violation for breaking the law. The law of our relationship, which we have agreed upon, was to do X, Y, Z, and she violates that. So it's violation, you could say, like a social contract, you could say, or a genetic contract. So that's how I see violation. I'll hand it back over to you. Frames. Frame is like, yeah, it's the context. It's the context of the conversation. That's basically, I think, a simple way to describe a frame. But we'll go more into it. The more we describe it, it will become real to people. And I believe these are terms that should be really viscerally understood. You should feel it, because when you can feel it, then you can start to adjust and calibrate. When you're ignorant to it, it's just, there's no adjusting, there's no improving until you can measure it, right? So I'll hand it back over to you, Akash. What do you think about that?
Yeah, brother, I think those definitions hit the nail on the head right there. The reason why I wanted to bring this up in and of itself was, as I mentioned, just an experience that I had last night. I was invited to a party, and there was, I guess the context of it is there was in total 2 guys, 3 girls. So I knew one of the girls, and we've known each other. We've gone hiking. We've got some good rapport together. And she invited a couple of her girlfriends over, but she invited this guy over as well. And they're close as well. I've never met him. I never met any of these people prior to her, prior to last night. But in and of itself, there were small, subtle realizations that I had throughout the night where I was seeing this guy break down, in the sense of there was many social violations that he was committing throughout the night. And I could see the more he continued to commit these social violations, whether he was aware of them or not, the less attraction the women had towards him. In other words, my whole modus operandi last night was really to just screw up less than this guy. I didn't have to do much. I really didn't. By staying kind of grounded and solid and recognizing each person for who they were, the place within the hierarchy that they stood within, if you will, or like the structure of the social organization, and recognizing that, it put me at a place of just, the women were just kind of like in awe, you know? And I didn't back down from this guy. I mean, he was older than me by quite a few years, and but it was in the way that we were talking that I would notice that he would either talk to me in a way that was just, it's not the way that you talk to to a new person. Like, he was being very closed off, and this was also due to communication techniques that I use. Like, I would just be completely vulnerable. So one of the things that I said in the conversation itself in front of the women was like, sometimes I have these feelings where I get really scared to talk to new people, and like I don't know how to do that. And I think my level of authenticity about that just threw him off, that like, because that was what he was feeling at that particular moment, and I felt it and I voiced it, but I voiced it as if it was myself. And so I slowly kept just throwing this guy for a loop here and there, and it added up to the point where I was seen as like the guy for the night, and the women were just attracted and staying around. So I wanted to get to this whole topic of what was it exactly that he was doing. And we don't have to only talk about this particular scenario, but I think this helps me crystallize it and think through the different scenarios of what are we doing that causes others not to like us when we go into a venue, or how are we violating others unintentionally in venues? So, brother, I don't know if there's anything there that spoke to you, or we want to unpack. And then secondarily, as I mentioned, we can get into the frames as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I also want to, just on a logistical note, bring to your awareness if the microphone is bumping things. I don't know if it does it for me too, but sometimes if it hits like your arm or something, so just be aware of that. And cool, yeah. As you're talking, I'm realizing, a couple of things. I love that technique of voicing the feeling that another person is feeling as if it were your own, and it can serve to like unify your mind with that person. You unify with that person, and you can also bring to the conscious attention, somebody's subconscious, which is so many applications of that. And I'm realizing as you were talking, like a social violation is anything, I believe, or violating a person, which it's not like I never want to violate somebody. You know who I want to violate is somebody that's being aggressive towards me. Somebody, like, I don't need to be polite to someone who's like yelling at me, screaming at me, being impolite. Like, that doesn't mean I need to be violating either. I can make a choice of what I want to do. But for the most part, in general, I don't want to violate people. I want people to come towards me. And so there's the clue. That's the realization I just had, that, whether it's the absolute truth or not, I have teachers at this, meaning they're better than me at this. So maybe they wouldn't agree with what I'm saying right now, but in my understanding, if you violate someone, it pushes them away. If you don't violate them, it pulls them closer to you. Or what would be the opposite of a violation? Angie, what's the antonym? Violate, what's the opposite of that?
To acknowledge, I guess, or to award. Yeah, to award support.
So you think award support? What do you think? What's an opposite to? Angie's my girlfriend. She's right here. What's the opposite of violate?
Like following.
Like violate. Adhere to, or
Yes.
Yeah, obey.
Obey. So to violate someone. Okay, good. So it sounds weird when I say obey. I'm going to look it up when I hand it back over to you. Obey is true. It's just it gives it a frame. Going into frame, it gives it a frame of like they're an authority. But I'm obeying their behavior program. I'm obeying their neurology. I'm obeying their genetic triggers, their resistance triggers, their attraction triggers. Respect could be, yeah, I could see obeying and respect. It's respect, but like we know this, respect means acknowledging something for what it is. It's not a certain kind of behavior. It's acknowledging something for what it is, the truth as it is. That's respect. Respect nature. Respect the person. Respect their behavior program. So showing respect for their behavior program is the opposite of violating. And so when I respect their behavior program, they come closer. When I violate their behavior program, they go further. And so every time somebody is pushed away from me, I violated them. For the most part. Sometimes there are a lot of skewed programs out there that are warped from their life history and their life experience and so on. So you interact with a lot of people so that you get a general picture of your behavior. And so, yeah, that's what I'm seeing as far as violation. That's what I think about what you just said. That when I go into a venue, how do I know if I'm violating someone? Well, they're moving away from me. They're not getting closer to me. I don't need to be in communication with them. They can just be getting closer in proximity to me. They can feel a little more comfortable. You can tell, like, there will be girls in a venue sometimes, and I'll be out. And when some really precarious individual comes in, somebody that's just like is violating almost by like their appearance or their posture, they just don't look necessarily safe per se. Not that they look dangerous, they just look unpredictable, or they look like awkward or something. You can't trust something about them. Watch the women get a little bit closer to me. Just a little bit closer to me, because I'm not violating. And I do violate. I violate some. Like yesterday, I was out and I walk in and I start talking to this girl, but she's on her phone. I see now the language pattern I could have used. But I was talking. I said like 2 or 3 sentences. She didn't even look up. And that would have been a violation had I kept staying there and talking. So I turned, I said something else. I changed the subject. I talked to myself, like, but out loud so that she could hear it. And I went out and back to where I was. There was very little, if any, violation. And then when I walked back in a few seconds later, I had my girl on my arm, a different girl, and then that girl kind of opened up a little bit. I mean, nothing else really happened after that. But it was about to be a violation. I was flirting with the edge of violation, but I didn't. I felt the friction, I felt the repulsion, and turned. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think this is the important thing, is becoming more aware of it, right? Because we go through life and we're not aware of how we're violating others. There's so many times where I've gone around and I would say something to someone, that time when you say something to someone and you make a joke or something like that. I've had friends who made jokes like when they were younger of like someone's like a joke about a mom or something like that, but that mom had passed away or something. or things like this. It's like you're not aware of, or like you're not aware of what you're doing and the impacts that it has on other people. A lot of the times, the way you talk, something that means nothing to you could mean the world to someone else. And becoming more aware of this is really important. But also just the way you move your body, the way that you go into, I mean, one of the things that I was taught by one of my soccer trainers was every time you go into a room, you should, ideally, you should shake your hand and introduce yourself to every single person saying, hello, my name is XYZ. This is just a general, like, good practice. Not if I was in that coach's class and I didn't do that, that would be a violation, because the frame or the context of the situation, the way he had outlaid that in his space, this is what happens. If I were not to do that, it would be a violation. So there's times when we talk to people and they tell us things. They may say that it's really important that anytime that we hang out, that you're on time, because timeliness has always meant something to me, and I think it's a really important way of being for me myself. And if you were in your head and you weren't listening to that person while they were talking, and then the next time you show up and you were 15 minutes late, you didn't let them know or anything like that, that would be an issue and a violation, because they'd communicated to you at some point in time that this is a really important value to them. And even though you were unaware of it and you weren't listening to them because you were listening to the voice inside your head, you're still violating them. And so I want to bring more attention and awareness to listening to others, for one. It's so easy to get caught up in the voice inside your head, especially when you're hanging out with other people. But two, I lost my train of thought right there. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. All right, well, I'm just going to leave it there then. Yogi Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, well, I was looking up the definition, and exactly, the opposite of violate is respect or comply. And complying is with the nature of the situation, comply with the code, the unwritten social code, and respecting that unwritten social code, respect the behavior code of someone. In the sense of a social violation, when we're talking about social respect, is the opposite. And I think it's important because if we know from our studies, the IMC method, that what you talk about grows. And so I want to counterbalance all of the 100 times that I've said violation already today with saying the word respect. So I at least balance it out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So I think we said a lot on that. Let's go to questions and then and we'll go into like some frames, see if that's something. Because we don't, like, we're defining things for you guys. This isn't teaching yet. If you think you're learning something teaching, we haven't started teaching. We are just defining terms and giving a couple examples of the definition. This isn't teaching yet. Join the Enlightened Masculinity private Facebook group next Saturday, 6 days from now. We'll give a donation lecture to you all. You attend. If you can't pay, you just pay $0, come in, whatever. See if it's what the value you're looking for. If you can't pay, give us $10, whatever you want, $20. Some people I've been paid up to $50 for the donation lectures because the people were moved in that way. You'd be surprised what kind of value we can give when we just get on the same page of common definitions of things. Then we can talk really fast about concepts and really level you up fast. All power to, maybe not all power, I wouldn't say it that way, but all respect. Due respect to my teacher, Aras Sapardeep Azar, and my other teachers, Vince Kelvin, Brian Casella, Frank White, and all of the yoga instructors that have imbued me with this knowledge, but definitely first and foremost, Aras Sapardeep. So let's see, on Instagram, we had some questions. I saw a big question. There it is. Lord Sonny Rose. Would social violation a sense of verbal violence? I think he's asking, is social violation like verbal violence? If it is, negativity is the message, and all negativity would need to become reciprocated through positivity. Lord Sonny Rose, are you American? I'm just curious. I'm just curious if English is your first language, because of the grammar. But verbal violence, I think, violate. That's a tough question, because violence seems to be, it's hard to, I have not found a very accurate objective definition of violence. There's a lot of subjective definitions. What I have found is sometimes some violent aggression seems to check the hierarchy, the social hierarchy. The alpha wolf needs to walk around and do a little bite here or there to check everybody in the hierarchy. That might be violence in the moment, but overall it's less violence because the hierarchy persists, and then the pack can go on as and do its job, do what it needs to do. So sometimes checking somebody into their position or testing somebody, which is another way of just saying checking them, testing them, which can come across as violent. So there's a subjective. To one person, it might be violent. To me, it might not be violent. To someone else, they might be undecided. If it results in the long term, overall, there being less violence, I hesitate to call that verbal violence. But I think that violation, meaning not showing the due respect to the program, it's more ignorance and carelessness. I would call it, instead of violence, I would call it either ignorance or careless communication. What do you think about that, Akash?
Yeah, brother, I would agree. I think it's more ignorant and careless than it is anything else. I agree with that.
Yeah, violent. I would call it violent if maybe you had like a violent intention, maybe. Okay, next question. Lord Swami Rose. Opposite of violation would be to understand. I think respect is, yeah, sort of. I think respect is the most, I mean, if you look up the antonym, it's the actual antonym of violence.
I think respect fits better as well.
Yeah, but understanding, I think you're on the right pulse of it. Brian Twello. My coach makes me run laps if we talk when he talks. Yeah, my dad did that too. He was my soccer coach. I ran a lot. And so, I ended up not playing soccer in high school, and I became a state champion runner. So there you go. Brian Twello, that's a violation. Brian Twello, I respect my elders and everyone. At least I try. Yeah, it's just about what is respect. Respect for elders is definitely, I think we can kind of come to a communal definition of what that would be. It's not like imposing your opinions on someone that's, at least if they're more than 10 years older than you, then there is just like a respect that is there for them just being alive for 10 more years than you. Like if it's 5 years older, then there's not much more respect there for being like another, a little bit, but not a lot. But 10 years, after a decade and being more than a decade older than you, there is just some added respect that a person gets from me. And I just feel that that's right. What do you think about that?
I agree. And respect is also, I see it in particularly in the context of learning and teaching, because that's how I spend most of my time, is that I always see that I can learn something from everybody. The people that seem like they have their things together and they're quote unquote successful, I can learn from them. The people who are not successful, I can learn from them as well, learn what not to do. And so respect for elders also just comes down to experience. So if you are in a particular field, for example, like let's say my soccer coach, if he'd been teaching, let's say he was only 25, but if he'd been playing soccer his whole life, he was a professional, he's professional and whatnot, he'd be more qualified to speak on the subject, even if he's only 25 and had taught for maybe 10 years versus someone who's 50, but has never played soccer before. So it's taking into context, what is their background? What are they teaching you on, or what are they sharing their knowledge on, or what are they speaking about, that it's important to come to some level of respect there. Maybe Yogi Chris, we turn it back over towards defining what frame is. What does that mean? And then we can find some questions there as well, if necessary. The way I see frame is, as we talked about, the context of a situation. So when I frame a situation where I am sitting in front of you and I'm talking as a podcaster, as an entertainer, a teacher, what have you, whatever you want to call it, there's assumptions that are made. So that's like when you sit down here, we said at the onset, this is entertainment only. It's that you see this as anything that we say is entertainment. So anything that we say is in the context of this is entertainment. So that's a frame. Is the idea that anything that you hear from me speaking is take it with what we had said before, if that makes sense. Yogi Chris, do you have anything to add here, or thoughts on frame itself? What does it mean and why is it important, I guess?
Well, I mean, it's super important. Things can be taken the wrong way if a different assumption or frame is put on a situation. And a lot of that has to do with implied meanings. So there's a lot of implied communication in a person's communication, either subconsciously or not subconsciously, unconsciously implied or consciously implied. So I'm saying something, and there's an implication underneath what I'm saying. The implication here is very straightforward. It's not hidden. The implication is that people might be confused about these definitions. That's the implied communication of what I'm saying right now. And I'm conscious of what I'm implying. But I was unconscious of what I was implying before I started talking about it. So there was it was unconscious. So there's unconscious implications, conscious implications, and a lot of times these have more to do with the frame than what I'm actually saying. There's also a frame, like an emotional frame on something, like the tonality of what I'm saying. And how I'm saying it in tone is putting a frame of how emotionally charged the situation is. It's a perspective. It's like the context of, for me, this experience is this emotion. So that's like a frame. But definitely on a discrete level, words are very discrete. They kind of make it very definite. So the frame of something, like let's say this is a big one. Like I talk about okay, I'll let you know. Like this is a big pattern that comes up a lot. A lot. It comes up a lot. Like, hey, I'll let you know. I'll let you know if I'm coming. Just the subtle frame in that is you have no power over me telling you if I'm coming. I'm letting you know. I will allow you to know if I'm coming. I'll let you know. So I'm aware of when do I use this phrase, I'll let you know. I'll let you know. Or when I'm aware when somebody says it to me, I'll let you know. And there's other ways to say it. I mean,
yeah. No, this is key right here. Absolutely key and crucial. It's like when you say something, it's not just what you're saying, it's what is implied by what you're saying. And you touched upon this, but I really want to harp on this a little bit. Is that the words that you say, they matter, but it's the words that are not said that are thought as a result of the words that you said. Like, what does what you're saying really mean? What does it imply? This is critical, super, super critical. Why? Because it means so much. It says so much about what's going on. And there's different levels of communication, right? So there's the level of what's being said, the literal words or the tonality, as you mentioned, the vibrations that are being communicated from one to another. But the ones that aren't said often have more power, or they hold a lot more weight, in the sense of, if you recognize that if I say a certain sentence, this sentence, when I say it, obviously it's for a particular purpose, but the things that I'm not saying as a result of that sentence as well are just as impactful. And so we're not oftentimes aware of what is implied by our communication when we speak. And this is another area that there needs to be more awareness, to bring more awareness to this. Start questioning when I say, as whatever phrase you want to use, even as Yogi Chris mentioned, like I'll let you know, or any small little thing. Question the things that you say most often. The little phrases that you say most often, like will do, or awesome, what have you. What is meant by it when you're saying it? What's communicated subtly or not through words when you say it. So, and this all again relates to the context of frame. So yeah.
Yeah, this has been a really powerful podcast. So I would say there's some questions here on YouTube, and so we'll just cover these before we got to get going. We got Emilio Marazzino. He writes a lot. He wrote a book over here. That happened to me after 3 years. I got violated. I never cheated on her and remained monogamous. Some kid hung around me every weekend for 2 years, and one night I found out they made plans. I think that means that your girl cheated on you with your friend. The level of betrayal these days is ridiculous. It's been all days, brother. Betrayal is timeless. Most girls are hypergamous. Okay, so like not monogamous, but hypergamous. I don't know that most girls are. I think that you just have that impression. A lot of girls actually, they dress like hoes, but they actually don't hold themselves around very much. It's amazing. It's amazing how many really fine women just actually haven't had that many sexual partners. They just dress like prostitutes. Like I saw this girl. I was walking down what they call Midtown here. I'm in a college town right now. And she literally, like, I actually know a pimp, guys. I know a pimp. His name is Kevin the Pimp. Boss Hog Macaroni, Atlanta, Georgia. Shout out ATL. Like, Boss Hog is an actual, now he's retired, but I mean, he's retired. Like, I mean, you tell me if he's retired. And this girl, I mean, every girl, so much, like 50% of the girls that I see out, but this girl in particular, like for some reason she caught my eye. I mean, she was fine, but I'm like, she looks like a prostitute. Like that's how prostitutes dress. Do you get how like prostitutes dress? Anyway, so what's the implied communication of their fashion versus what they're actually saying? So there's a frame that their body language and their fashion is putting on the situation, but then their communication has a different frame. That's why guys go crazy. Like, but you're dressed that way. It's like, don't judge me the way I dress. It's like, well, then don't dress like that. I mean, what the fuck do you want me to say? If I dressed like a yogi, but I talked like a CEO of some finance company, that would be awkward, wouldn't it? Like you're dressing like a prostitute, but then talking to me like you're a psychology major. Like, what are you thinking? Okay, Emilio Marazzino. Most girls are hypergamous these days too, and it depends on where you are. I find that in places where the weather is mostly sunny and near the coastline all year round, the girls are less stuck up. All right, probably the guys too. I'm from New York, and the people here are totally horrible here, and people only want attention mostly, and it's all about attention versus respect. And get out of there. Leave there. I love you, Emilio, because you subscribe to my channel, and I feel for you. I feel for you, brother. I'm only 4 years older than you. I feel for you. I don't tolerate complaining. If you don't like where you are, get the fuck up and move. You're an adult. You're a man. No complaining. Don't complain. Just don't. If it's so bad that you got to complain, then leave. If you have some reasons why you're not moving away, then stop complaining. Complaining just weakens your masculinity beyond belief. No complaints. Guys who tend to have a lower self-esteem tend to have a higher level of violence. Yeah, I see that too. I mean, that's an idea. I don't think that's inaccurate. Okay, those are all the comments. Do we have any closing thoughts, Akash, or do you?
Yeah, two closing thoughts. One, I highly recommend. This is something I've been listening to this week, and I want to share along with all of you guys. Vince Kelvin does a podcast, the Aphrodite's Prince podcast, and this week his topic was mature masculinity, and he talks about what's alpha masculine behavior and what's beta masculine behavior. I highly recommend you guys take a listen to this. One of the things he talks about is that alpha admits, accepts, and acts. So admits being that, okay, I was in a place where I was in distress and I was allowing all of the outside to really impact me and frazzle me and whatnot. I wasn't at a place of real groundedness where I see something and if I like it, I like it. I voice I like it if I want to. Otherwise, there's no need to. So that's the accepts. Admits. Admit is like when you are, it's saying that like, yeah, I was not in the right mind state and it is what it is. And then acts and moves and changes their behavior in a way that is consistent with the values that they feel. One of the biggest things that I found is that oftentimes people they have some inner voice that they want to communicate, but when the situation around them is inconsistent or violating with that inner voice, they allow the external situation to happen. And we touched upon this yesterday, is when you allow things around you to happen that are inconsistent with your values, you take a hit at yourself and you're really killing a part of yourself. So long story short, check out that podcast episode, particularly this week. I think it really parlays very well with some of the things that we had talked about today. And lastly, Yogi Chris, thank you so much. Seriously, as always, I genuinely appreciate the time that we spend together talking, communicating, and getting to tap into your minds after all of these thousands of hours of teaching under Arash and Vince. It's really cool to see how does another fellow student really integrate these concepts and apply them, because the verbiage that you use is oftentimes slightly nuancedly different, but it's incredible what it can unlock. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Shout out to my teachers. Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, super cool, guys. So as usual, you know where to find me. You know where to get your training with Yogi Chris, myself, not to refer to myself in the third person. Go to ninthlim.com, sign up for my silent flute program. Again, this is a podcast. Like we gave you definitions, maybe a couple little tips and tricks. My silent flute program will blow your mind. 2 lectures per week, plus you get a private, customized curriculum of various yoga practices to really take you to the next level. And whatever your outcomes are, we'll do a little clarity call, get you exactly what you're looking for and needing. Got a wide array of different specialists in my program. I'd love you to be a part of it if we're a fit for each other. Also, private Facebook group, Enlightened Masculinity, and we'll do our talk 6 days from now. Let's see, anything else? If you're catching the recording for this, then leave us a comment, leave us a review. This is how we show up in the search query for, iTunes and so on. We're available on all the platforms. And cool. So thank you, Akash. And I guess we'll be touching in again next Saturday here at Enlightened Masculinity. Namaste.